In this friendly 1 vs 1 match, which evolved into a spectacular battle of huge space fleets, my opponent wanted to just build and have fun. So I got a chance to capture a lot of important details when it comes to resource harvesting in Homeworld Remastered and create this guide I promised in my previous Homeworld Remastered gameplay guide and multiplayer match commentaries.
We're standing by. Strike group coordinates locked in. Moving while engaging.
I will show you this match in full in a future video, so don't worry, you won't miss out on any of the fireworks. To start off well and collect a lot of resources fast in any Homeworld Remastered multiplayer or skirmish match, you need to do 3 things as soon as the match starts, no matter which faction you have chosen. Number 1 is to open up the build menu using your mouse or the B keyboard key and order the construction of 2 resource collectors / harvesters on both your mothership and starting carrier. You can do this even as they are coming out of hyperspace, and it saves precious time as the match is starting. The second thing you want to do as soon as you can control the movement of the carrier and mothership is to send them into optimal positions to receive future harvesters full of resource loads. The carrier is much faster, and that is why you send it to the next nearest resource patch to be the base of future resource collection in that second patch or node, however you wanna call it. The mothership needs to get into an optimal position of its own, just at the starting resource node. For my favorite faction, the Kushan, as well as the Higarans, the mothership needs to stop just in front of the resource node, with its back turned to it and the middle section at the same level as that is where the drop-off point for harvesters is. Of course, this won't be an easy feat of maneuvering, no matter which faction and type of mothership you have, as these biggest ships need a lot of space in between them and the resource node to move and also not to get stuck. The third important thing to do is to keep sending the harvesters to work as soon as they leave the mothership hangar base. If you let them, they will just park in a parade spot on the mothership side and do nothing. This is the same with all new harvesters you construct, or if they exhausted the resource node, so you have to keep an eye on them and keep them working continuously. The first time you send them to the nearest asteroid field to harvest resources, about half of them will be just hovering in place, as you have more harvesters than the resource node has spots for them to work on. This is just a transition phase, as you have no harvesters which are full, and are going to offload the resources at the drop-off point on a capital ship or mobile refinery. The resource collectors, which are waiting right now, will take over as soon as the first wave is full and heads off to their drop-off points, starting the proper chain of harvesting, and you won't see so many waiting at one spot again. During this time, your carrier has probably reached its destination at your second resource node, so you want to make sure to maneuver it into the optimal position as well, just like the mothership. For the Kushan faction, the best location is just above the asteroid field, as the harvesters will come into it to drop off resources from underneath and leave at the front. For the optimal resource drop-off positioning of other factions and their capital ships, you will need to watch them carefully and discover where to relocate them relevant to the asteroid fields for harvesters to have the shortest flight path. As for the optimal number of resource collectors per resource node, no one really agrees on that. On one hand, having double the number of resource collectors than a node can support at the same time means always having another harvester to take over a harvesting location as soon as one before it has a full load and disengages from that spot. On the other hand, this increases the wait time they spend in a queue inside that asteroid field, which they could spend harvesting resources in another field, but where, because of fewer collectors, no one will take over their slot as they are going to and from the resource drop-off point. Now, of course, you can tinker with the mothership to get it into the exact and most optimal position you want. But as I explained previously, that can be tricky and might cost you more than you can gain if you end up having to correct the position too many times.
New capital ships available for construction. Resource collector complete.
The second stage of resource collection in Homeworld Remastered starts with the building and deployment of mobile refineries. I recommend building these only once you have set up 2 resource nodes with a bunch of resource collectors in a good collection and drop-off chain. Depending on your faction and available resources, you can send or hyperspace these mobile refineries to new far-off resource nodes. The price of a jump might feel high, but the time saved can make a big difference. However, you end up getting them over there, you need to construct additional harvesters at your capital ships to keep the mobile refineries operating at maximum efficiency. The optimal placement of these ships depends again on their design. As for example, the Kushan's refineries have their drop-off points at the bottom, so again, like the carrier, they have to be placed just above the resource node for their optimal position. Once you build a second carrier, you can move to take over yet another resource node, and considering you can build ships from the carrier, you can choose a node closer to your enemy or the central and usually the richest node on the map. If you have built more mobile refineries, you can also leave those behind at old nodes and send your 2 carriers and even the mothership to the middle node. This way all your production capabilities are centralized and all new ships can defend the newest and richest resource nodes you have captured, while the old and by now quite exhausted resource nodes remain behind with only the mobile refineries and a few harvesters. The whole resource harvesting system of Homeworld is quite different from what you're used to in other RTS games, but I personally love it for its uniqueness.
Group 2 reporting.
Attack bomber complete.
Attack coordinates locked in. Group 1.
Another interesting thing about it is that you can send the resource harvesters to pick apart the remains of enemy capital ships you have blown up and recycle some of the wreckage into resources. Now, as you saw in this match, both I and the opposing player didn't attack each other's harvesting operation for a while in the beginning of the match. But even when this does happen, these ships have a considerable amount of armor and health, so investing in more of them at the start of a match instead of ships to defend them is actually beneficial, because the first few types of ships simply do not have the necessary firepower to quickly blow harvesters up, despite being fast enough to reach your harvesting operations from the enemy's position. While ships researched and built later in the match do have the firepower, but lack the speed to get to your resource collection operations quickly. There is no one answer or build order in this game because of how open and fluid the gameplay is and how much it depends on both your and your enemy's actions. But the 3 moves I have described at the start of the guide about building harvesters first, placement of drop-off points like the mothership and carrier, and keeping harvesters working on their job are crucial and unchanging in any multiplayer or skirmish match. And for more such matches and guides, check out the cards on the screen. Thank you for watching and happy gaming.